The day Noah Carter played. Jefferson Middle School, nestled in a quiet corner of Little Rock, Arkansas, was not the kind of place that welcomed difference. It was a place where predictability reigned and where being invisible often felt safer than being seen. Noah Carter had learned that the hard way. For 3 years, Noah sat in the same classrooms, walked the same narrow halls, and heard the same tired voices of teachers who never really looked at him. He wasn't the class clown. He wasn't a troublemaker. His homework was always done on time, neat and thoughtful. But none of that seemed to matter. No matter how hard he worked or how sharp his answers were, his hand would shoot up high only to be overlooked again and again. At first, he thought it was coincidence. Then, it happened too often to ignore. Noah was invisible in the eyes of his teachers, especially in the history and arts classes, where his ideas about black leaders and artists were met with quick subject changes, or worse, polite silence. He'd watch as the same teachers encouraged white students to explore their talents, to share their voices. But when Noah spoke up, it was as if he disrupted something sacred. He'd learned to stay quiet. His mother once told him, "The more attention you draw, the more reasons they'll find to push you down. Just do your part and let them be." So Noah did. He kept his head down. He worked twice as hard. He waited for the day he might finally be seen for who he was. But the hardest part wasn't the silence. It wasn't being ignored. It was knowing that they were waiting for him to fail. The teachers, the other students, waiting for him to make a mistake. To slip, just once, so they could confirm what they already believed. Noah Carter didn't belong. And then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, everything changed. The unexpected invitation. Noah sat at his desk near the window, his pencil flying over his notebook as he finished the last few questions for his social studies assignment. The familiar rhythm of the morning wrapped around him. Quiet hums of conversation, the shuffle of papers. Tyler, his only real friend, gave him a thumbs up from 2 desks away. Another day, another class, another hour of being ignored. But then, Miss Lillian Howard, one of the oldest and most traditional teachers at Jefferson, called his name. Her voice cut through the room like a knife. "Noah," she said, looking directly at him for the first time in months. "Why don't you answer this one?" The room fell silent. Heads turned. Even Tyler raised an eyebrow. Noah sat up a little straighter. He cleared his throat, his heart pounding as he scanned the whiteboard. Sherman's March to the Sea, he thought. Easy. It was a military campaign led by General William T. Sherman in 1864, Noah said, his voice calm but confident. Its goal was to cripple the South's economy and morale by destroying infrastructure and supplies. Silence. His answer was perfect. Not a single error. But instead of nodding in approval or offering the usual encouraging words given to other students, Miss Howard frowned. She murmured. Not bad. No praise. No smile. Just those 2 dismissive words. Not bad. Noah's stomach twisted. It wasn't just bias. It was something else. Something calculated. Moments later, Miss Howard flipped through her gray book. Her smile, sharp as broken glass, spread across her face. "Noah," she said, "I hear your grandfather was a pianist. We're having a performance tomorrow. Why don't you play something for the class?" There was a pause before the whispers started. Brandon, the rich kid in the back row who never passed up a chance to mock Noah, chuckled. "Wait, he can play piano," he snorted. "This I gotta see." Noah stared at Miss Howard. He saw it then. She didn't want him to play. She wanted him to fail. She assumed he wasn't any good, that he was just another black kid with a legacy he couldn't live up to. He could say no. He could refuse. But that's exactly what they wanted. If he refused, they'd label him a coward. If he agreed and failed, they'd never let him forget it. Noah took a breath and nodded. "All right," he said. Miss Howard's smile stretched wider. She thought she'd won. But she was wrong. The weight of expectations. Tyler caught up with Noah as they left class. "Are you sure about this?" he whispered. "They're not giving you a shot, man. They're setting you up." Noah smiled faintly. "I know," he said. "But they're not ready." That night, Noah sat at his grandfather's old piano. It wasn't pretty, worn wood, a few sticky keys, but it was his. His grandfather, Charles Carter, had taught him everything he knew. Not just about music, but about life. "Music isn't just sound," Charles used to say. "It's a story. It's your voice when they don't want to hear you speak." Noah ran his fingers over the keys, breathing in the familiar scent of old wood and polish. He closed his eyes and played. Blues. Jazz. The kind of music that carried generations of stories, of pain and hope, of struggle and pride. And he practiced. Not because he needed to learn, but because tomorrow mattered. The trap is set. In the teacher's lounge, Miss Howard sat sipping her coffee. Tomorrow's lesson will be enlightening, she said, almost casually. Mr. Bradley, another teacher, smirked. He'll freeze, he said. Happens every time. A little pressure, and they crumble. Miss Howard didn't disagree. He's smart, but he's not special. They thought they knew who Noah Carter was. They had no idea. Performance day. The next morning, the atmosphere at Jefferson Middle School was thick with anticipation. Students gathered in whispers. Some excited, some cruel, all curious. Noah entered the classroom and went straight to his seat. Tyler gave him a nod, but Noah didn't respond. He was focused, calm. Miss Howard stood at the front of the room. Let's see what Noah can do, she announced, as if she were the ringmaster of some show. The piano sat in the corner. Dusty, neglected, forgotten. Until now. Noah walked to it slowly. Every step deliberate. He sat down, placed his hands on the keys, and closed his eyes. For a moment, there was only silence. And then he played. Soft, slow notes drifted into the room. A melody so familiar it felt like home. Blues, rich and deep. His grandfather's favorite song. The same one they played on the porch during hot summer evenings. Then he shifted. The melody grew stronger. His fingers danced, gliding over the keys like rivers flowing over smooth stones. Complex chords. Improvisation. Passion. The room was silent. Students who had once laughed were frozen. Brandon sat up straighter. Madison, who never spoke much, leaned forward, watching in awe. Even the teachers had stopped moving. Miss Howard's smile had vanished. Noah didn't look at them. He didn't need to. The moment everything changed. He finished with a flourish. A final, ringing chord that seemed to hang in the air long after he lifted his hands. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a clap. One person. Then another. And soon, the entire room was applauding. Noah stood slowly. He met Miss Howard's gaze. She stared back, expressionless, but he saw the truth in her eyes. She had underestimated him. And she knew it. You didn't think I could do it, Noah said quietly. Miss Howard opened her mouth. Closed it. Then, after a long pause, said, not bad. The words were hollow now. The aftermath. The days that followed weren't magical. Jefferson Middle School didn't become a utopia overnight. But things were different. Teachers hesitated before ignoring Noah's raised hand. Students who had laughed at him now watched him with curiosity or respect. Madison started sitting with him at lunch. Tyler grinned whenever someone mentioned the performance. Even Brandon, who usually couldn't resist a jab, gave Noah a nod in the hallway one day. Just a nod. But it was enough. And Miss Howard? She never mentioned the piano again. But she also never ignored Noah again. She called on him. She listened to his answers. She couldn't erase what had happened. Noah didn't need an apology. He didn't need validation. He had his music. He had his truth. And they had finally listened. The legacy lives on. At home, Noah sat at his grandfather's piano as the sun set behind him. He played softly, the music drifting through the open window. His mother listened from the kitchen, her eyes soft but proud. You did it, she said quietly. Noah nodded. He didn't need to say anything. His hands spoke for him. The lesson. Noah Carter had spent years being invisible. Years waiting for someone to see him. But in the end, he realized something important. You don't need permission to be seen. You don't need approval to matter. You just have to be brave enough to take your place at the piano and play.